How are you guys seeing Philly when it comes to the big picture?
I mean, their starters are blowing teams out of the water. I mean, that's really what it's coming down to. That first unit has been really, really good. And if they are gonna win multiple playoff series, it's gonna be because those guys just are too much for anybody else to handle. I think Harden has kind of been really overlooked in their success.
100%.
People talk so much about Embiid, and deservedly so. He's unbelievable. And people kind of talk about Harden like I don't know, just kind of the way that he's fallen off. People talk about him like he's not good anymore. Uh, that dude is one of the most spectacular passers in the league. And when they have their starters on the floor, their offense just hums. They are extremely difficult to guard. They obviously get to the free throw line all the time with but Harden doesn't play the same way that he did in Houston. Like, he's not just foul baiting all the time. So much of their offensive success has to do with the fact that he is so good at getting to the middle and creating threes or creating dunks. And he's just tremendously important for how great their offense has been. That they're definitely scary, but they
Can we
still
have
have those
Slater hop in on
moments.
the hard? I'm curious,
Yeah.
Slater, your Harden perspective from this standpoint, because you're right, Fred. I agree that he's been overlooked. We reported recently, Kelly Eco and I, about his possibility of going back to Houston in the offseason. And one of the things that I learned during that process was that while, all the intel we ran into was that, listen, they're playing well. Things are mostly going well in Philly. It's not a situation of like, oh, it's quietly toxic and he wants out. But there are things that I do think are part of James Harden's free agency calculus. And one of them is, damn, I can't even get on the all-star team playing like this. I'm leading the league in assists. And there was, I think, that type of a sense. And so, Slater, the point of throwing it to you, I think, is that you covered James Harden at his peak in all those Warriors Rockets playoff series.
Thought you were
When
going back to the Thunder for a second there.
yeah, no, not that far. But like that, if you're James Harden, and if you're only, and this is not the case, if your only priority is to get individual acclaim for your talents, he got that in Houston. He got plenty of criticism, but he had the spotlight all the time. What are your observations on the way that he has gone from being that guy who's almost, Luka now is doing what James used to do, to this guy who is pass first, still scoring the heck out of the ball. I mean, shooting plus 40% from three, playing his ass off, but not really getting the love.
Well, I think obviously it's he could go to Houston. This is still how he should play. He shouldn't go to Houston and think, hey, I'm going to be Houston James Harden again. I just think physically he's not there. I think he needs to preserve his body the best he can. I don't think he has the burst he used to. I think part of the reason he's able to play this way is he's no longer, the first 25 lines of the scouting report. I mean, I can remember back to those Houston days, especially covering the Warriors going into Houston. Like, it was all they would talk about pregame was like the James Harden defense, hands behind the back, how to defend him, how to angle everybody off screens. I mean, everything was built around him, which means every defense that scouted for them was like locked into him. They're no longer doing that. As far as why the conversation, yeah, I think he has had an underrated season. I will agree with you guys. But also part of that, he's flirting with the Houston Rockets as they're trying to climb up the East standings. Like, clearly that's happening. So that's kind of lived as somewhat of the conversation around him. That might be part of it. And also he plays with a not even just a dominant player, a dominant personality who
I think the 12-12 start killed him, to be honest. Now that we're looking at it, Tyrese Halliburton comes out the gate. Like, if you're looking at all-stars, Halliburton and what he did early on this season is what kind of, early on secured his all-star spot.
You know what else, Sam? You know how like these organizations have very targeted push for stuff. Like the Kings, for example, how hard did they push Fox and Sabonis as all-stars this season? That was like such
shout
a
out
goal.
Mark Jones, first name De'Aaron, last name All-Star.
Yeah. And you could tell every time Mike Brown comes in the room, if he mentions them, he's like, are all-stars,
Yes,
remember? Now he's saying all NBA. He's trying to say that.
Right.
But
never enough.
Daryl Morey runs a lot of the Sixers public push, right? He's obsessed with the Joel Embiid MVP chase. So not only do you have a dominant player, dominant personality, Joel Embiid, who kind of is owning the narrative of the Philly season, I think, but their GM is like, that is his goal is to pump up the Joel Embiid MVP Chase. And I would say part of that is not necessarily, hey, but also he has a dominant all-star right next to him, James Harden. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I'm guessing.
He also missed games.
Yeah, that's true.
He had missed like 16 or 18 games at the time of the All-Star break, which is
he came
a
on
lot
mid-season.
at that point of the season.